Howdy everyone, and today I have something a little interesting which turned out to be pretty enjoyable to test out. Chinese company Gear are launching a line of higher quality manual focus optics called Dulens, and this is the first one, the Dulens 85mm f2 APO. It's for digital SLR cameras, full frame or APS-C, and it can of course be mounted onto mirrorless cameras too with the right adapter. It's manual focus and manual aperture, and it can be found for about $500 or just over £400 in the UK. So that's a slightly expensive price for a manual focus lens, but if it turns out to be any good, it might be a nice little option. I'd like to thank Gear for sending me a copy of this lens for testing, but as usual, this is a totally independent review, strengths and weaknesses and all that. On full frame or APS-C cameras, an 85mm f2 lens is perfect for subject and portrait photography, potentially getting you some very nicely out of focus backgrounds and snappy shutter speeds for shooting in darker situations. The market is saturated with lenses like these, which are reasonably sharp and have slightly brighter maximum apertures than f2. But if you're after a very sharp 85mm lens, then they do tend to cost a bit more money. Something that you're paying for with this lens is obviously its very nice build quality and somewhat stylish, interesting design. I quite like its brushed metallic, off silver and bronze coloured lens body. I just wish I had a camera good looking enough to match it. The lens is very tough and metallic, being based on a metal lens mount and weighing just over 400 grams or just under a pound. But it's still nice and compact, which means it balances nicely on most different digital SLRs. The aperture ring turns very smoothly and slightly heavily, and the iris mechanism has 11 aperture blades to it. I much prefer an aperture ring with clicks to it for stills photography, but video makers will at least be pleased by the smooth movement. The lens's focus ring turns exceptionally smoothly and with plenty of precision to make focusing it quite easy. It has hard stops at either end, stopping nicely at infinity on my copy of it anyway. The lens's image zooms in rather noticeably as you focus more closely to your subject, as you can see here. The lens's front filter size is 55mm wide, and it doesn't come with a lens hood. And that's about it for build quality. It's a simple but quite nicely made and quite attractive looking lens. Let's take a look at image quality now. I'm testing it by adapting it onto my Sony a7R II with its high resolution full frame 42 megapixel sensor. These pictures are taken without any in-camera corrections. In the middle of the image, straight from f2, picture quality is essentially perfect, extremely sharp with excellent contrast and no purple fringing. Nice. Let's look in the corners. They look a little softer, but at least we don't see any chromatic aberration and the image is remaining nice and bright there. Stop down to f2.8 for a touch more brightness and clarity there, and at f4 the corners are lovely and sharp. They stay this sharp down to f8. f11 is just slightly softer though. It seems like the softening effects of diffraction are kicking in just a little sooner than usual here, but f16 still looks quite good. Overall, the image quality of this lens is very sharp and clean on a full frame camera, especially in the middle of your images. If you need corner sharpness too, then stop down to f4, although to be honest, those corners are never too bad. Okay, let's test the lens on an APS-C camera. My Canon EOS M6 Mark II is out on loan to a friend right now, so I'm mounting it onto my 24 megapixel Sony a5100. Impressively, the image quality remains absolutely razor sharp in the middle of your images straight from f2. The corners again look a little softer. This time though, you only need to stop down to f2.8 for some very good sharpness in those corners. f4 looks even better and f5.6 perfect. Stop down to f11 and again we see just the tiniest little bit of softening image quality, and f16 looks very slightly softer again, but overall the Dulens 85mm f2 is clearly a very sharp performer on an APS-C camera. Okay, let's move on and take a look at distortion and vignetting on a full frame camera. These shots are taken without any corrections. we are treated to some pretty good results here, almost no distortion, and even at f2, vignetting is quite low. The image corners look relatively bright. At f2.8 and f4 they get even brighter, but overall, vignetting and distortion are not a problem for this lens particularly, a very good result. Now let's take a look at close-up image quality. It can focus as closely as 90 centimeters to your subject, a little further than usual for this kind of lens, so it won't be mistaken for a macro lens. At f2, close-up image quality is a little softer than at normal focal distances, but stop down to f2.8 and that excellent sharpness returns. Now let's see how the lens performs when bright lights get into the picture. We witness quite a major slip up here. We are treated to plenty of flaring, with strong patterns and a loss of contrast too. It would be worth getting a screw-in lens hood of some kind to go with this lens to help out. Next, bokeh. In all my test pictures, I found this lens's bokeh to be lovely and smooth, as you can see here. Even quite difficult backgrounds like foliage are rendered smoothly. And related to bokeh is longitudinal chromatic aberration. The APO label in this lens's title means that it's being marketed as being apochromatic, which means we should only see minimal colour fringing on bokeh highlights here. Well, we can see just a touch of purple fringing in the foreground and green in the background here at f2, but it is fairly minimal. That will improve the quality of the bokeh in your pictures. Stop down to f2.8 or f4 to see any colour fringing totally gone. Okay, what can we say overall? The Dulens 85mm f2 is a little on the expensive side for a manual focus lens, but you get nice build quality and a very good optical performance for your money here. It's great actually, it's impressively sharp, it has very low distortion and vignetting, nice bokeh, and low colour fringing, lateral or longitudinal. Its one slip up is that dreadful performance against bright lights, which is a bit of a shame. But other than that, the sum of its parts add up to make it a surprisingly nice option for digital SLR shooters. I enjoyed testing it, it's just about worth the money, and so it comes recommended.